Hello again to another Agakfella Reacts, and today we will be watching When the Atlantic Ripped Open a Supercontinent from PBS Eons. Another great channel I watch often, and I make quite a lot of reactions to it as well, and we're just gonna learn something new. Because, you know, everyone hears about Pangea.
At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean lies a chain of volcanoes stretching almost the entire north-south length of the globe. It's called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and it's part of the longest mountain range in the world. And while the eruptions of these volcanoes don't usually trouble us, their birth was once responsible for ripping a supercontinent apart and creating the Atlantic Ocean that we know today. Because it didn't always exist. In our time, the Atlantic Ocean covers a fifth of the Earth's surface and influences the climate of the entire planet. But before the Atlantic, there was the supercontinent of Pangea. Pangea formed when most of the land masses merged around 320 million years ago and lasted for nearly 150 million years. During this time, plants and animals extended their ranges across regions now separated by vast expanses of ocean. But toward the end of its reign, something big started brewing beneath the supercontinent's surface. Heat began to build up in a mantle beneath Pangea, a concentration of heat that would go on to completely change the course of life on Earth. By some measures, it produced the largest volcanic eruption our planet has ever seen, splitting the supercontinent in half and forming the Atlantic Ocean. Oh, and it caused a global mass extinction in the process.
Okay. Well, yeah, obviously everyone heard about the Pangea. Obviously, well, everyone who's kind of interested in the history, like a prehistoric stuff and things like that. And obviously, it didn't take as fast as it's shown and in that with like graphics and stuff like that, because that just takes seconds and takes probably millions of years. So yeah, and not that surprised that the and actually no, I kind of am surprised that it's the Atlantic that ripped open the supercontinent. I thought that would be something less. I don't know how to say. Just to know. This one's gonna be longer, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back, and the ad's finished. And we can go back to the Atlantic and how it ripped open the supercontinent.
The first sign of trouble came in the Middle Triassic period, 230 million years ago. A rift in central Pangea began to form, stretching and pulling the continent apart, forming faults in the crust. This began to split what is now Africa and North America. It started slowly at first, growing over 30 million years until it stretched for 5,000 kilometers. And all that time, heat kept building up beneath
30 million.
Where the heat came from is still a bit of a mystery. It could have been
I think the humans are that old
below, but the morphology and the chemistry of the rock left behind doesn't quite fit this explanation. Or it could have been that convection cells formed at the edges of Pangea and funneled heat inwards, concentrating it below the rift. Or, like a chicken sitting on an egg, the thick supercontinent might have essentially incubated the mantle beneath it. Whatever the source, around 100 degrees Celsius of excess heat built up in the mantle beneath the supercontinent. And then, all of a sudden, magma from this area burst through the faults 201 million years ago and overwhelmed the rift. This eruption was the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP for short. It erupted in 4 major pulses over 600,000 years. And each of these were extremely brief in geologic terms, only a few hundred or 1,000 years long. But each would have been catastrophic. In total, the camp spewed out enough lava to cover over 10 million square kilometers. That's roughly the size of Canada. In terms of how much of the surface of the Earth was covered, that's the biggest eruption we know of, ever. Most of this lava erupted in smooth flows that creeped across the land, similar to what we see in Hawaii today. And it was made up of melted tectonic plates that had subducted into the shallow mantle long before Pangaea had formed. The lava cooled into a fine-grained dark volcanic rock called basalt, and today it can be found all around the edges of the Atlantic. Scientists first started to figure this out in the 1970s when they noticed similarities between rock formations in Florida and Senegal. And those rocks were approximately the same age as the Atlantic, leading to the idea that this eruption caused Pangaea to break up and the ocean to open. Since then, many more matching rock formations have also been found in South America and Europe. And in the 1990s, geologists brought all these observations together and the camp theory was born. These massive eruptions affected more than just the geology. A Canada-sized outpouring of lava is going to have a pretty big impact on anything living at the time. And scientists had long suspected that the camp eruption had something to do with the end Triassic mass extinction. But for a long time, they couldn't prove it. Because while both occurred right around 200 million years ago, it wasn't until 2013 that they were able to figure out the age of the camp rocks precisely enough to know for sure. See, when the camp basalts cooled from magma, crystals of the mineral zircon formed. These crystals tend to incorporate uranium atoms into their structure while pushing lead atoms out. Over time, the isotope uranium-238 decays into lead-206, and this happens very slowly. It takes about 4.5 billion years for half the uranium in 238 to make this transition. So, by counting the lead and uranium atoms in a crystal, scientists can calculate how long it has been since that zircon cooled, along with the rest of the camp rocks around it. This revealed that the end Triassic extinction started just 100,000 years after the camp magma began rising into the upper crust, making a connection between the two events almost certain. Which is maybe not surprising, because the entire duration of the camp eruption would have been a brutal roller coaster of conditions for life on Earth. When all that magma emerged through the rift across Pangaea, it poured sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. In the lower part of the atmosphere, this reacted to form acid rain, which soaked into soils on land. Higher up in the stratosphere, sulfur aerosols formed. Along with volcanic ash, these reflected sunlight and rapidly cooled the planet. And the combination of acid rain and volcanic winter was only the start of trouble for life. Carbon dioxide came directly from the volcanoes, as well as from magma reacting with the sedimentary rocks it flowed through. This doubled carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, emitting roughly as much as humans will by the year 2100. The effects of the CO2 took longer to be felt, but warmed the planet by more than 4 degrees Celsius. A little bit of warming also could have triggered a runaway feedback loop by thawing methane clathrates. That's ice under the seafloor that contains methane gas within it. This would have released methane into the atmosphere, which is an even more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. With rising temperatures, wildfires tore across the continents, causing chaos for life at the time. And we can still see the remnants of these fires preserved as charcoal in sediments. Now, the oceans did absorb some of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but this caused the oceans to acidify and coral reef ecosystems collapse. 96% of coral genera went extinct. And on top of the climate changes, the volcanoes emitted some nasty stuff like halocarbons and
the first extinction?
Gas. Halocarbons degraded the ozone layer and exposed life to more ultraviolet radiation, causing mutations. And mercury did the same thing more directly. Of all the elements, it's the one that most easily causes potent damage to DNA. We can actually see the effects of both of these in fossilized fern spores from the time. They had higher rates of mutation than before or after. So the end Triassic extinction was pretty bad. Overall, almost half of marine genera went extinct. All but one ammonite and up to a third of bivalves were impacted, and an entire class of eel-like creatures called conodonts went extinct. On land, the extinction was the final nail in the coffin for many reptiles and amphibians, although some were already declining by the late Triassic. For example, plagiosaurs, a family of armored, flat-headed amphibians, met their end, as did phytosaurs, reptiles that looked deceptively like crocodiles despite not being their direct ancestors. But on the other hand, there was one group of animals that fared pretty well through the end of the Triassic. The dinosaurs. Some of their traits helped them out, like insulating structures called protofeathers, which helped warm them during the sudden freezing of the volcanic winters. And the end Triassic extinction cleared out much of their competition, setting the stage for their rise and domination throughout the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. So, splitting Pangaea caused a mass extinction that altered the course of life on Earth, along with beginning the opening of the Central Atlantic. Forming the entire ocean was a long process, which continues to this day. The Camp eruption eventually became the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. New seafloor forms at this ridge and slowly spreads outward. Today, the Atlantic Ocean is still widening by a few centimeters every year. And this ocean has completely changed how our planet works. The Gulf Stream current makes Europe's climate much warmer than would be expected from its latitude. And the North Atlantic is the only location in the Northern Hemisphere where dense cold water sinks to the seafloor and helps power global ocean circulation. But it won't be around forever. The birth of the Atlantic was the first part of a pattern called the Wilson cycle, which also predicts how oceans close. Today, the Atlantic is in its seafloor spreading stage, the midlife of an ocean. But we might just be starting to see the transition to the next stage. Some scientists think that off the coast of Spain and Portugal, the oceanic plate is starting to subduct beneath Europe. And while it will likely be 100 million years or more before the ocean closes, when it does, the cycle will end with the creation of the Earth's next supercontinent.
100 million. Oh, it's not bad, I think. Obviously I won't be there. Because who is going to be there? No one. Unless with the next few, I don't know, 100 million years, I wonder if humans gonna survive, would be able to survive that long. If we want to cause our own extinction. I'm not talking just about global warming, I'm talking about coming wars and stuff like that. And the nukes flying over and things like that. Or we're just gonna eventually in a few thousand years go out there in space and get some some aliens that are very powerful and they're just gonna wipe us up out. Anyway, that was interesting. What did you think about it? Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!